Senate Democrats will bring one amendment after the other, again and again and again, to put Republicans on the record. We'll begin this morning with a motion to appeal the ruling of the chair to try and reverse Senate Republicans' brazen attempts to deceive the American people about the true cost of the bill. Republicans are doing something that has never been done before in the Senate by deploying fake math and budgetary hocus pocus to make it seem like their billionaire giveaways don't cost anything. That's obviously outrageous, and it's absurd that the budget chair is taking the Senate down this fact-free road. He is helping erode, even destroy the Senate. Every senator will soon have an opportunity to reject this.
Remind the senator of Rule 19.
Every senator will soon have an opportunity to reject this nonsense and vote for common sense budgeting.
To my colleagues, it's going to be a long day.
Mr. President, there are a lot of government programs that haven't been looked at in a long time. We all acknowledge that 75% now of federal spending is what we call mandatory spending. Entitlement programs, things that Congress doesn't annually appropriate for. And it continues to grow at an uncontrollable rate. In fact, the growth in the rate of Medicaid spending in the last 5 years has been 50%. That's not sustainable. We know that's not sustainable. And in the time I've been here, we have never, ever done anything to reform and improve and strengthen these programs that are growing at an unsustainable rate that will wreck our economy and wreck our country if we don't start making some changes. And so, yes, there are some improvements and reforms to Medicaid to make it more efficient, to make sure that the people who are supposed to benefit from Medicaid do, and that it doesn't go to people who shouldn't benefit from Medicaid. And so what do states do? They game the system to get more federal money. They add more people to the rolls. And so you have people on the rolls today who are here illegally, you have people on the rolls here today who are not eligible for this program, and you have people here today for whom there is, in that program, for whom there's no work requirement. And so what this does, it makes some reforms, one of which includes work requirements. I don't think that's a novel concept. It certainly isn't a concept that I think most Americans would disagree with. In fact, it was a Democrat president. Back in the 1990s, there was something called welfare reform. Bill Clinton, a Democrat president, proposed work requirements for welfare recipients. And you want to know something? The work requirements in the Welfare Reform Act passed back in 1996 and signed into law by Democrat President Bill Clinton had stronger work requirements than are included in this bill. Everybody got up last night and they were clamoring and yelling very animated speeches about how the Republicans they're using a current policy baseline. How could they ever do that? Well, you know what? Back in 2012, President Obama and one of the people who was working for him at the time, named Jeff Zients, used the current policy baseline to make permanent the Bush tax cuts. And the way he described it, Jeff Zients described it at the time, he called it the alternative fiscal scenario. That's how they explained to the American people. And then he translated it and said what it is, it's a current policy baseline. So the Democrats have used this before. In fact, they you could argue, pioneered it. But current policy baseline is something that's been used by both sides. So it's a little, spare me the hypocrisy and the noise about current policy baseline. Alternative fiscal scenario, he called it, and then he went on to explain current policy baseline. We have different views about the role of government. Democrats like government, and one of the things we know about government is when you send money to Washington, money is power. And when you send money to Washington from the American taxpayers, that means Washington has more power. It has more control. And Republicans fundamentally have believed that it's better if you allow the American people to keep their own money, that you distribute power out of Washington, D.C., back to state and local governments who are closer to the people and can make better decisions that are more informed by what's actually happened in their individual states. And so when we use reconciliation to keep taxes low, and by the way, that's all we are doing here is extending current tax policy. We are preventing over a $4 trillion tax increase on the American people. And when you vote against this, that's what you'd be voting for. That there be 2 minutes equally divided prior to all roll call votes.
If you're for open borders, this bill is your worst nightmare because we control the border. If you want higher taxes, which apparently they do, this bill is your nightmare because we're going to keep tax cuts low. If you want to have a weak military, this is a bad bill for you because we give the military $150 billion. If you think Washington should control spending, this is a good bill for you. If you think the government is running just perfectly and nothing can be changed, this is your nightmare. So for those big liberal folks who I like personally, this bill is a nightmare for you. This bill is good for the American people who work hard. People got to work when they can. That's a good thing. If you want taxes low, we deliver. If you want to secure the border like President Trump has done, we make it that way forever by having $175 billion spent to get it controlled forever, not just right now. This is a good bill. We're doing nothing that we haven't done before. Vote yes to uphold the ruling of the chair. We're starting a process that is long overdue in this town, controlling spending, keeping taxes down, making the military strong, and finally looking at a way to get efficiency in government.
Their bill, the so-called big, beautiful bill, which is really a big, ugly betrayal, cuts taxes for billionaires by taking away health care from millions of people. So my amendment simply says, if people's health care costs go up, the billionaire tax cuts vanish. Republicans, you can tell in their speeches already, are on the defensive. They know how bad this bill is for the American people. They know that Donald Trump is lying when he says it won't cut health care. I salute my colleague from North Carolina. We all heard what our colleague from North Carolina had to say yesterday about this bill. My guess is about half, maybe even more than half, of the Republicans in the Senate agree with him. But he had the courage to speak the truth. He said it himself. The bill devastates his state, but make no mistake about it, it will devastate the states of almost every Republican here. It is outrageous to take food out of the mouths of hungry children, to take health care away from people who need it to survive.
Senator's time has expired.
Just for tax cuts for billionaires. And the American people know it. To my colleagues in
Senator's time has expired.
To my colleagues in conclusion, I say you know what the right thing is. Say no to gutting health care. Say no to gutting jobs. Say no to this shameful,
the senator's time has expired.
Backward bill.
Mr. President, this is a motion supported by all finance Democrats to send the bill back to the Finance Committee to strike all the Medicaid cuts and ensure that big corporations and the ultra-wealthy pay their fair share in taxes. It is now clear that there is bipartisan opposition in the Senate to the Medicaid cuts in this bill. That's because it's the biggest Medicaid cut in history and represents the largest transfer of wealth in history. It is caviar over kids, hedge funds over health care, Mar-a-Lago over the middle class. These Medicaid cuts are going to reach down into every corner of our nation's health care system. As we've heard from rural America, rural hospitals will close their doors. Seniors are going to lose care at home and be left with fewer nursing homes and fewer nurses. Kids with disabilities will lose health care. We saw them on the steps of the Capitol last night. Never have I seen legislation
Senator's time's expired.
focused on denying health care to eligible Americans.
I just want to share with America the great work that Republicans have done on Medicaid, that we're preserving it, we're protecting it, we're strengthening it for those who need it the most. We're going to make sure that your seniors in nursing homes, that pregnant women, that children, that people on disabilities have Medicaid in the future. We are fiscally making Medicaid more sound. You know, it's only in Washington, D.C. that you increase spending at a rate faster than than inflation, and you call it a cut. So we're increasing spending on this legislation. We're increasing funding for Medicaid. We are preserving and protecting it for those who need it the most.
Mr. President, across the country, Americans of every political stripe are urging us to come together to help bring down painfully high costs. Instead, the President is making life even less affordable, both with this partisan budget bill and with his decision to launch a trade war with our ally, Canada. The President's tariffs, combined with this bill, will raise costs for firefighters, truck drivers, and teachers by $500, all so that the wealthiest 0.1%, making over $4 million, get a $350,000 windfall. At a time when the American people need their costs to come down, I can think of few ideas as willfully self-destructive as launching a trade war with one of our closest allies and, in effect, imposing a national sales tax on families and small businesses. I urge my colleagues to listen to the great majority of Americans who need their costs to come down and to support my motion.